Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Sarah Cowgill, Tim Donner, and Scott Cosenza. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, 2020 going out with a bang? One more step in the election process, and 73 million Trump voters are holding a collective breath for justice or a miracle. Will there be a Happy New Year's gift? Or will we be headed back into the swamp for 4 more years? Trump's final plays. Does the president have anything up his sleeve before Congress certifies the electors and puts Joe Biden in the Oval Office? It's showtime, folks. The Pence card, flush or fold. Lots of chatter across the ether claiming Vice President Pence may have a silver bullet awaiting the werewolves in Congress. If he does, will he take aim and shoot? And finally, Nashville explosion still sparking questions. An explosion ripped through the quiet Nashville streets on Christmas morning. Now folks are conjuring up all sorts of theories as to who did what and why. And finally, the top memes of 2020 as selected by our Conservative Five panel. You won't want to miss this madness. All this and more coming up on the Conservative Five. Like it or not, President Trump has a date with destiny, and that date is looming. On January 6th, lawmakers convene on Capitol Hill, and everyone who voted for the president is, well, bracing themselves. Will Congress give the final nod to Biden to make him number 46? What are the chances Republicans will make a last stand and disrupt the vote? Millions of Trump voters believe he is holding back one last silver bullet, locked and loaded, but will he aim and fire? Jeff, you've been writing nonstop about Trump's battle with those calling for him to concede. You think there's something in play here or just wishful thinking on the part of Trump supporters?
Yeah, unfortunately, Lisa, I think we're just holding out hope. I mean, a lot of us, saw what went down with the election, and we saw how, the media tried to cover up, legitimate allegations of voter fraud, whether or not there was enough to give the election to Biden. But I think at this point, we are looking at a Biden presidency. I know that the challenges aren't done yet. I mean, there's talk of Senator Josh Hawley objecting on January 6th. I believe Representative Louis Gohmert is going to do the same. So there will still be challenges, but I don't believe that there's any silver bullet that can come out as of yet from what I can see so far.
Yeah, and from what I understand, Mo Brooks has been leading the charge on this from Alabama for a while. Anyone else want to weigh in on this?
Well, there's plenty of people who have threatened to challenge this. How many actually step up? I don't know. The House Freedom Caucus has 40, 50 activist members, all of whom, as best I can tell, object to the result of the election. Doesn't make any more sense to them than it does to most Trump voters. So, I think there's a pretty good chance it gets challenged. I think it's more a matter, since this is very unusual for somebody to openly challenge an election. Though it did happen in 2016, unbeknownst to many of these challenges were swatted away. So there's plenty of people willing to challenge, but once they do, that's really the issue. What happens when they do?
Well, that's a great question. Scott, you have any thoughts?
Okay. Can you repeat the question, please? Just so it's so particular, all these things. And honestly, Lisa, mostly I'm learning about these processes as we go along. It's not like this is a part of the Constitution I ever paid any attention to before, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, really. So what happens and when and what people can do, the power that they have to act. Tim said that there's, this caucus is willing to challenge, but beyond saying that in insufficient numbers, and I know we're going to talk about the vice president in a little bit, but the power to actually move the needle, I don't see it being present here.
I hate to say it. I don't see it either. I know that there are 73 million people holding out hope that somebody's going to draw a line in the sand and dare them to cross it. I don't see it happening. I think people are going to regress. I think they're going to go back to their party roots and go, how do I stay alive? I just don't see it happening. And I think that's a great shame that we're going to have yet another election that half the country believes was stolen, was false. We've got to get that in working order before we even go any further.
Well, the difference is that while on the left, if you can imagine the sides reversed and you had 74, 75 million Biden voters who thought the election was stolen, imagine the rampant violence, the rampage that we would have seen if the result was reversed. And I can tell you that if this one is reversed, we're going to see, I think, literal civil war in the streets. I mean, I think that would be the consequence. Not that that should be the determining factor of whether there should be challenged or not, but at this late date, if something, if anything got up momentum to overturn the election, I mean, I can't even imagine the violence. It would likely be the same as we saw all summer throughout, urban landscapes across the country.
Well, I think it would be, 100 times worse than what we witnessed this summer. I think it would be everywhere. Of course, that means all you city folks ought to move somewhere where I live.
Okay, who here can step us through the only possibility we're looking at?
Scott's the constitutional lawyer.
No,
He's
but he doesn't have
who...
it. Tim, honestly, I don't think he has it as clear as you do. Sorry, Scott.
Don't be sorry. It's okay.
Yeah, Tim, you've got the history on this.
Well, essentially, it takes just one member of the House and one member of the Senate to challenge the election. But from that point on, they would have to literally stall a vote, because ultimately a vote would come on the challenge. But essentially, once those challenges begin, essentially the only way that Trump could win is if they let the clock run out and if the assigned time for debate ends with no vote, then things stand on January 20th with no president. And it's essentially a mirror image process in the House for a vice president.
All right, so we're playing a little bit of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington here. What do we got? 24 hours, 48 hours, 72? What's the deal?
How long is the time frame of the vote? That's critical.
Well, I mean, we don't
Lisa,
really...
I spoke with Liberty Nation's Jim Fight, who wrote about this for the site recently today, and he told me that it's a few hours time from when the challenge issues until the vote on the challenge will occur. That would be the process that would carry that over past the 6th, which again, I think it's important to add, is extraordinarily unlikely to occur, that would be a successful vote to challenge these results.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there would even really be a way to filibuster this into a scenario where Trump still holds on to the presidency. I don't know if they can push it back that far.
And I think politically, there's too many Republicans who feel like they'd pay a steep price in 2 years if they support this last gasp effort.
As well they should, I say.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're running into now. They're just, it's at the point, I mean, politicians, what are they concerned about the most? Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. It's the next election and their own political fortunes. That's what they're looking out for right now. And on balance, being on Trump's side with this extraordinary appeal that might happen with challenging the electoral vote, that's not something that they feel is going to increase their support.
And in that vein, there is a silver lining here. Regardless of what happens with the presidential election, I am seeing a conservative base that is riled up and ready to go. And they're angry, but they're not just angry at the Democrats. They're not just angry at the activist media. They're angry at the establishment as well. So when we're talking about politicians who are looking to the next 2 years, 2022, I'm seeing a base that could be galvanized into ensuring that we actually get Republicans in office who are actual conservatives, rather than people who are just going to kowtow to the Democrats or the people who want to go back to the days of Mitt Romney, the old establishment days. I think that this sets us up nicely. And with Trump, even if he's out of office, he's still going to have a lot of power, a lot of influence, and he's not going to shut up. He's going to make his opinions very well known. And I think that this will be a good time to keep our people accountable.
Well, in the and just kind of coattailing with what Jeff just said, Red states are angry. People are angry, and they're angry that he's not getting support from Republicans. They are calling on people to rise up and run against these yahoos in 2 years. They feel have been traitorous to the party and to their president. So, they're between a rock and a hard spot. I think if they, just thumb their nose at the process and go with the Democrats and don't stick up for their president, I think they're going to be in trouble in 2 years. I don't think they're saving their political hides whatsoever. I think they're, putting the last nail in the coffin on their own accord.
Both parties have a decision to make here. The Democrats have to decide if they want to be fundamentally a progressive party or a traditionally liberal party. But the Republicans have to decide if they want to be, like Jeff said, the old party of Mitt Romney and John McCain and George Bush, or the party of Trump, because he's the guy that got the presidency 4 years ago and got 74 million votes this year. So that's a pretty fundamental choice, because one is a populist vision and one is a traditional conservative vision. One is an on the ground, one is a 20,000-foot philosophy of how government should run. These are fundamental choices. And I guess the question in Georgia is how many people that wouldn't vote for Trump because of his personality will come out for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, and how many people that were all jazzed up about kicking Trump out are going to be similarly energized to come out for the Democrats, Warnock and Ossoff.
Honestly, you brought something interesting, Tim. If Trump doesn't have a Hail Mary in the works, I think there's going to be a lot of people more than a bit disappointed. And it'll be fascinating to see just how many people plan to show up for that march coming up in Washington, D.C. Of course, Liberty Nation will be there to cover. Scott Cosenza and Graham J. Noble are going to be on the ground. But, I doubt we'll see the mainstream media lining up to cover it. And this is a travesty that our media has become such a propaganda of the Democratic Party. And there's going to be so many people, I think, that are not going to be willing to say that Joe Biden is the legitimate president of the United States.
It's a problem of great magnitude, and not just for this year, but going forward, because it's really, as much as this election has been contested and argued about and debated and not accepted by the great bulk of Trump voters, for me, I think the danger going forward is even worse, because the attempt to create a fraudulent result was successful. What does that mean? It means they'll try it again. Witness Philadelphia, who Scott can tell you an awful lot about. They keep employing election fraud over and over and over, and they never get caught, because a key part of it, a successful election fraud, is not getting caught. So that my concern is pretty much even greater going forward.
Yeah, what I'm hoping for is that after this, Republicans in these battleground states will see what happened during 2020 and put in measures to fix this in time for 2024. Now, if they don't do that, they deserve to get primaried. And I will be shouting that from the rooftops. But hopefully this will learn a lesson from this, because you're right, Tim. I mean, the Democrats are going to try to do this again. We need to put in obstacles to prevent them from doing that.
Well, January 6th is right around the corner. We don't have long to wait for the wackiest election of our lifetime to be officially closed. And my guess is Scott would say, not a moment too soon. Stay tuned, folks. This is sure to be a wild ride. Being Vice President of the United States is not all about representing the nation at funerals or stepping up at the most dire of circumstances. Veeps had the tie-breaking vote in the Senate and the job of opening certified electoral certificates. But there are limits to what a vice president can do, and Mike Pence's power at the joint session of Congress may have been greatly exaggerated of late. Some Trump supporters are insisting that he could use his role as presiding officer to invalidate the results from various states, causing the hashtag Pence card to trend on social media. Wishful thinking? And while the Veep is not allowed to toss out any electoral votes, folks are wondering if he will open both the official electoral votes and the self-appointed alternate electors in those controversial swing states. Let's begin with our Debbie Downer. Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire. What are the odds that the vice president may have a parting gift for Congress, Scott, or will he play nice in the sandbox?
The odds are thankfully quite low. I think that it would be.
Whoa, thankfully.
The Constitution is quite clear. The 12th Amendment says that the vice president shall count the votes that are presented by the states. It's not that the vice president shall determine what are valid votes and not valid votes and reopen the election. He's to take the votes and read them and enter them. And that is his constitutional role. And to the extent that he deviates from that, he violates his oath of office, as far as I see it, regardless of what skullduggery or nefarious activities went on in November. He has one role here. And if he doesn't do that role, he's trashing the Constitution, as I see it, at least. And so that's why I think it's infinitesimal. I don't think he will, not to mention the fact that I think for his political future, the math would be, for every the opposite of a never Trumper, I guess, is an always Trumper, right? Good or bad. So for every always Trumper that he would lose for doing that, I think, or gain by doing it, rather, he would lose so many other people who value fidelity to our Constitution and the norms and legalities that it prescribes.
Well, may I just ask, what about fidelity to the electoral process? What about all these people that dumped votes and screwed with machines? And is that
just
not
read to me the part of the
unconstitutional as well? I'm just saying, are these not acts of unconstitutional behavior?
Probably, and nowhere in the Constitution does it say that when other things happen, does the vice president get to throw his constitutional duties that are prescribed to him, required by law. Right in the Constitution, it says he shall do this. It doesn't say he shall do this if and when he certifies that other constitutional errors didn't occur. No, it doesn't say that. It says he shall do this.
Are you saying that the only people that have to play by the Constitution are conservatives, and the left gets to just play willy-nilly and do what they want with it? Because that's basically what you just said.
Are you saying, Sarah,
I
that
agree.
if somebody breaks the Constitution on one side and they're not immediately punished, then other constitutional officials get to do whatever the hell they want? Because it sounds like that's what you just said. I think
exactly
that
what I just
everybody
said.
should follow the law and the
Look,
Constitution and
look,
suffer
we-
the consequences if they don't, no matter who they are.
We need to bring this up from the same perspective I was talking about before, which is Mike Pence and his political future. Because going into this election, you had to figure that he would be at least the default front runner for 2024 for president. Now, if he takes this extraordinary measure, he has to weigh for his own political future what that would do for him. And to fall on his sword for a last-ditch, long shot, 1,000-to-1 shot to overturn an election, I think his calculus would be that will cost him his shot at the presidency. Others would say, well, he'll be a hero to the 74 million Trump voters because he was willing to stand up to the end. But that's the decision facing him. And frankly, no one has more pressure on him about this than Mike Pence.
Oh, agreed. But Mike Pence is not a favorite of the red states. He never was. He balanced Trump's, abrasiveness to some degree, but there's not going to be a rallying cry for Mike Pence for president in 2024. There will not be.
If there is anybody in American politics who I would not want to be right now, it would be Vice President Mike Pence.
Agreed.
Damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. And the reality is that the majority of Americans and the majority of people on the right are not constitutional scholars like Scott is. So they don't know that the Constitution orders him to do this. And then you throw in the lawsuit that Representative Louis Gohmert has filed, sort of against Pence, but not really against him. It's more to if that lawsuit were to succeed, then Pence would be able to choose which electors he counts. But that one's a long shot as well. But all people see is the fact that Louis Gohmert filed this lawsuit, and they don't understand the full context of it. And what'll happen is if Pence does not uphold this, if he goes with the way the Constitution says, he's going to get a lot of fire for it. And I don't think that people will forget about it by 2024. But even then, we don't even know if he even plans on running in 2024. We don't know what his future plans are either. So
Jeff, I think whatever he does, whichever way he goes, is political suicide. So
Yep.
Don't look for Mike Pence going, hey, look at me. I was with Trump for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, one could make the argument that if he does just go along to get along, that might piss off a lot more people. I'm just saying.
I think it's a matter of
It's
whether
not going along to getting
what he does.
along to fulfill his constitutional obligation and obey his sworn oath. That's not going along to get along. And we don't have a society where because one person does something wrong, you could just do whatever the hell you want. And if he reads these pretend electoral votes, I will write checks to whoever his opponent is going forward to make sure that he never sees power again. That's how horrible it is to just invent electoral. Like it doesn't get more profoundly existential to the question of our republic than choosing this leader. And just because horrible things happened in the lead up that may have been unconstitutional, certainly were illegal, that does not give Pence the right or power to do anything other than his job and his duty. And I think that I hope that most Americans will join me in demanding and expecting him to do just that and not go far afield.
Well,
yeah,
I think
I'm spot on this. Because what we're talking about here is something really dangerous. Yes, the Democrats didn't honor the Constitution, but what happens when both sides don't honor the Constitution? We might as well just rip it up and just draft something new that says if one party does something, the other party gets to do it. It doesn't work that way. If somebody comes and steals my car, he should get punished by the law. But if I go and steal his car as revenge, that still doesn't justify what I'm doing. So even though the Democrats don't care, we can find other ways to subvert their plans. We know they don't play fair, so now we know what to do. But it doesn't mean that we need to sacrifice our principles, which are based on the Constitution.
I think for Mike Pence, it's a matter of if he prefers the electric chair or the gas chamber.
Yes.
Because that's what, as Jeff said, that's what's facing
one thing in here, if I might, Lisa. We just passed this. There was just this almost passed. I guess I don't know what the current. Is Mitch done with it anyway? This giant spending bill that was the COVID relief package part 2, and nowhere in that bill, and there was there was no word limit, as we know by looking at what was all included in that legislation. Nowhere did they say all states must certify their election results to X standard. And as I understand it, Florida has a good standard that people on both sides of the aisle tend to agree with is fair and true to vote kind of a thing. But in any case, pick a model that everybody can agree on. They're out there, and give federal money or condition federal money on states certifying that it meets that by the next congressional cycle, for instance. This could be done, but they're not doing it. There's no demand happening there for these systems to actually come up to where they can be relied on. And until that impetus is there and people, move in that direction, we're never going to see the end of this election shenanigans.
Well, not yet. Because, it's not over till it's over, Scott. And I think hopefully we will see things like that. I get the two wrongs don't make a right. I remember my dad saying that. But at the same time, you can't have half of the country playing by the Constitution and the other half playing by their own damn rules.
Well,
that doesn't work.
The problem is the perception. The perception of over half the voters in this country is that this election was not free and fair. Sure, perception is not concrete, but it is as a political force, and it is for the future of the country. So that must be solved. And I mean that no matter who takes the oath of office on January 20th, likely Joe Biden, these investigations have to continue full bore, and we need to hear everything, and it needs to be digested. It needs to be put into a form that people can fully understand the breadth of the fraud that did occur in this election, and let them decide on their own whether the election was stolen or not, but give them confidence going forward that we can actually believe that the vote that's reported is true.
You're damn straight. Otherwise, there will be a generation of conservatives that won't even bother to vote.
Exactly.
Why should they? In fact, there's a lot of people in Georgia now wondering whether they should vote.
Yep.
That's true. Trump was the one that got. This
is why we need federal action.
Couches.
Oh, the libertarian calling for federal action. Okay.
Federal standards for election integrity.
Let me just finish, Scott.
She gotcha.
I personally don't see our vice president throwing down a joker in the hallowed chambers, but this is no ordinary process. It's no ordinary election. I mean, I honestly, I don't care one whit about Pence. I care more about the results and the outcome. But Pence has always struck me as a man of restraint. He was the yin to Trump's yang. And if he plays nice in the sandbox at this historic moment, I fear he could ruin his reputation and the America First crowd for eternity. Now, what you're saying is he will violate the Constitution. And my point is the Constitution has already been violated. In the pre-dawn hours on Christmas Day, an explosion rocked downtown Nashville, destroying cars, damaging buildings, and terrifying residents. As you likely know by now, an old RV blasted computerized warnings to evacuate in between the Petula Clark pop hit song Downtown emanated from the vehicle. It was an odd tableau, to say the least. Thanks to the brave efforts of the local police, no one was injured, and it appears the bomber was on a suicide mission. But without a message claiming responsibility and a motive for such an act, conspiracy theorists are having a field day. Tim, have you entertained any other reason why someone would want to blow up an RV on Christmas without telling folks why?
Well, the best thing I can think of is that it's so easy these days to leave a mark on society, because in the internet age and social media, everybody can see what you've done, even if it's in your dying gasp, even if you're a dying person, even if you're going to die in it yourself. It leaves a mark on the world, which is now much easier to do because everybody will talk about it and tweet about it. And people like us will talk about it and debate it without knowing what the answers are. So, I mean, the purpose, I think, would be to make his name known. And it is, isn't it?
Yes. However, if you're going to go out with a bang, pun intended, you don't warn people. You don't get people out of the way. I don't understand why the location. And I'm not just the curiosity killed the cat kind of person out there. I'm one of millions and millions and millions. And there's no answers, and it makes no sense. It makes no sense. There's no suicide note. There's no nothing. There's no, hey, AT&T needed to go or
that's why I think my explanation makes sense.
Let me just say, what's the point of going down in history for something nobody understands?
Because nobody's going to talk about this if there's no point to it. It'll go away.
Most considerate suicide bomber ever. Thank you for the warnings.
Okay.
I think that we are going to know this guy's motive soon. I think that law enforcement will uncover it. It would boggle my mind to think that he would do something like this and go out of his way to make sure that he doesn't kill anybody except for himself. There was a reason why he did this, and they have found evidence that he was into a lot of conspiracies. He may have believed in lizard people, and so this guy was kind of far out. Yeah, he was very far out. We don't know anything about his political beliefs, thank God, because the activist media wants to blame this on Trump. They do. But as of right now, he was into some weird stuff, and it also came out last night that his girlfriend warned the police last year that he was making bombs, and not a whole lot was done about it. So that will be another scandal that comes out of the story. But I do think that they're going to find out why he did this.
But we never
think you need to know why AT&T. I still think you need to know why that particular location.
Yep.
We never found out why the Las Vegas bombing occurred. It wasn't a bombing. It was, the machine gun fire from
the shooting. Yeah, the shooting.
Right. I mean,
Stephen Hatfield's motive has never been
found out.
We never way that we can rely on.
A whole bunch of live, you have a bunch of dead people. We
never found out his motive either. So I think this idea that there's going to be a clear motive for every single terrorist incident like this is an unrealistic expectation.
Well, we don't know actually if it is a terrorist incident, right? I mean, terror has a motive.
By its nature. By its nature, it is.
I don't think so, Tim. Terrorism is attacks that are terroristic attacks are terroristic by motive. They want to terrorize people. We don't know that this person who did this, assuming it's one person, and I'll grant you that, we don't know that his motive was to terrorize. And I'm not joking when I say that the warnings and all that, I don't think that that's the smart money bet. I don't think it was to terrorize people. What's the terror? Don't go near big RVs that are curiously parked that are shouting warnings that there's going to be a bomb that goes off. I'm not terrorized of that reality. I just won't go near those RVs.
I think that's
I
a
agree with you. This
distinction.
doesn't seem like a terrorist act. I think he just wanted to bring attention to his own death.
Well, I think it's an act of barbarism. Okay, if you want to parse words, okay, maybe it's not technically what's defined as an act of terrorism. But you think the people of Nashville were terrified, terrorized? I'd say they were.
Well, and going back to, what we were saying about Vegas, I mean, just because we don't know the guy's motive doesn't mean that his motive wasn't known. I mean, because I think that law enforcement knows exactly why he did what he did, and they're just not telling us. That could happen here too, but I think in this case, I have a feeling that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to find out his reasoning for doing what he did. And yes, people were terrorized. I mean, and I don't know if that was his objective or if he was trying to get back at AT&T, like Sarah was saying. All that stuff is important, and I do think it's going to come out.
Well, he warned people. He blew himself up in front of AT&T. That has got to have something to do with it, lizard people or not. He apparently left no note. This is going to be discussed far into 2021 until I think there's some sort of satisfactory answer. How did we ever get through the trials and tribulations of 2020? Living through impeachment, COVID, more COVID, Dominion election machines. It should have all taken its toll. But sometimes, you just got to laugh. And we did just that at Liberty Nation. We hope you did too by enjoying our memes all year. Our Conservative 5 team has selected its picks for best meme of the year. So away we go. First up, we go to Snarky Sarah to see if she has a dose of snark or a spoonful of sugar. I don't know which way she'll head. Sarah girl?
Oh, well, I have to go snark. I am representing 73 million ticked off Trump voters in the red states. And so my meme is, well, you see it right there in front of you. Here we go. Things that left us in 2020. Well, let's see. How about a Supreme Court justice? How about Fox News? And how about bullets off the shelf? And toilet paper, the biggest head scratcher we in the red states had because we couldn't figure out why anybody was hoarding toilet paper when it was, a Kleenex outbreak. We don't know. We'll never know. But that's our meme in the red states.
Scott, are we going to get to share our NRA story now based on Sarah's meme?
Go right ahead, I guess.
Okay. All right. Quick story. So we got to share a lane and ran out of some ammo as we were firing a bunch of different handguns. Anyway, long story
Not
short,
at me, by the way.
I go out to the front and, I said, I need a box of 38s, a box of 9mm. And he's like, well, I'm out of, X. And I'm like, this is the NRA. How can you be out of ammo? And he said, well, we buy from the same suppliers that all of you buy. And I thought,
and this is the NRA headquarters range in Virginia, where presumably, not for a wildcat round, just to specify, we were shooting 38 and 9mm, the two most common, perhaps, cartridges available for sale.
Yeah, well, they were out of them at the NRA, and what can I say? All right, who's going to go next? Jeffrey.
Yeah, so my meme, I chose it because it is the most prophetic meme that I can find. Because I don't care what anybody says, we all know that this is exactly what's going to happen. And I'm predicting it's going to happen right after 2022, right after the midterms. That is when Kamala Harris is going to go visit President Joe Biden. They're going to have a little conversation. She's going to wheel him out on the wheelchair. They're going to take a little walk. They're going to talk about all the things that they've accomplished. They're going to talk about how horrible those right-wingers are, especially since we'll keep the Senate. And she's going to say, just like the end of Mice and Men, she's going to tell Joe, just look off into the distance and see all the things that we're going to accomplish. Bloop. Now we have Black Hillary as president.
Toss him overboard.
Sound effects were phenomenal.
Did you say black?
Black Hillary, yes.
She ain't black, Jeff. What are you talking about?
Hillary.
She's black enough for me to call her Black Hillary.
How about Hillary of color? Would
Hillary
that
of
work?
color.
That might work. I mean, I can't make fun of her Indian side because then they'll call me racist. But if I call her Black Hillary, then they can't call me racist. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Scott.
Well, I won't insult the Indian Canadian lady who's going to be our vice president for sure. And I like that, Jeff, by the way. I think it's going to be a couple more years, though. I think there's probably one of these deals where he just told her, like, it's only going to be one term and then you can have it. But my meme is just about how it's not that they're telling you what's not true. It's the opposite of what's true. So it's not that Donald Trump didn't collude with Russia. That would just be false. It's that Joe Biden did collude with a foreign country involved in Russia, the Ukraine. Okay. It's not that Trump's kept kids in cages or made cages. It's that Obama did. So Trump didn't do it, but it's the person who CNN favors as the best president in history, Barack Hussein Obama, who built those cages for kids and put them in there. And just goes on. Pelosi and Schumer, the projection that they invent, obfuscation and investigations that they engaged in. And then, of course, Biden with the quid pro quo, Hillary with Russia. You know, every single thing that these are these major milepost kind of arguments about what is wrong with the other person. It's not just a lie, which it is, that, for instance, Trump, I mean, that's the kind of favorite one because it's so big, right? I mean, basically at the beginning of the administration, we had people who were supposed to be serious people go out and allege that Donald Trump was almost a Russian agent. And of course, it's not true. And it's not just a lie. It's the opposite of the truth.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Well, I'm going to go next. My best meme for 2020 involves, three guesses, the media. It reads, in North Korea, people are forced to listen to propaganda. In the USA, people do it willingly. I have to say, this is the most disturbing thing about 2020 for me. The level of brainwashed people I talked to as a result of the crazy left-wing media. People who heretofore seemed rather normal. In one case, someone who voted for Trump in 2016 and who drank the MSM media Kool-Aid. Yeah, I found it more than a bit troubling that Americans so willingly were able to buy the leftist narrative while ignoring reality. You know, this is why this was meme numero uno for moi. Tim?
Well, I pick one, and it's hard because, you know, and I don't just do this to toot our own horn, but Liberty Nation has all the best memes every day. So we've had about 360 this year, and those are 360 candidates. It's impossible almost for me to pick one, but the one I picked sort of brings together a number of threads from the year. It reads on a sign at a high school, due to COVID-19, we are asking rioters to work at home and destroy their own stuff. So that sort of brings together the pandemic, the urban violence, the unrest, the uncertainty, the destruction, the working at home, being forced to, and of course, you know, the coronavirus, which cast a shadow over the entire year like never before. So I thought this kind of pulled it all together in a humorous way.
All right, well, I think this week we're not going to vote. We're going to let our viewers at home choose their most favorite meme. Anyway, that's how we take the body blows at Liberty Nation, with a bit of snark, a lot of humor, and faith that this year will come to an end. And that's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all our TV productions. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $17.76 a year. And remember, liberty all the time and everywhere.